What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. Tonight, we're going to finalize our coverage of the Club World Cup. A fun tournament, I think, for all things considered, but we're going to talk about our final thoughts on it. At this point, by the time you're listening, the final is going to be done and dusted. PSG will have dog walked Chelsea back to Europe.
Settle down, settle down.
I haven't introduced you yet. You're not allowed to speak. We're gonna close the chapter of the footballing calendar and look back with some of our final thoughts. You know, how did specifically, obviously with MLS focus, so how did the MLS teams fare specifically, and our just thoughts on the tournament and how we would like to see it come back if we want to see it come back at all. I'm Andrew, and this is your Club World Cup recap, and I'm not introducing the other guy, which means he can't talk. Nice.
All right, well,
Or I could
episode's
say,
over. Andrew monologue for 40 minutes.
yeah, that's what the people need. That's what the people want. Connor, what's up, buddy?
I mean, in fairness, I think you did one episode by yourself this year, and it was a well-performing episode,
I've done a
from
couple
what I
of
remember.
I've done a couple of them over the past
Actually,
5, 6 seasons.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll do you one better. That's the best performing episode this year. So maybe that's my sign.
There's
I
a
should leave.
there's a theme here. There's a very big theme here.
It was a really good episode. I remember listening to it at the office.
It was funny because I was trying to speak to myself and it didn't go very well, to be fair. Um,
Well, listen, I don't like to pat you on the back because you've got a big enough ego as is, but you did a really good job with it.
oh, I don't have that big of an ego. I could get so much bigger, so
I don't
much
know.
bigger.
I literally don't even know what's behind you because your head is so large. All I
Nice,
see is your head.
nice. Yeah, no, that one hit 200 downloads. That's pretty cool. Not the best
I
performing
know.
episode of the season though, because for some reason, our Columbus Crew not so deep dive is on 300 and
Oh yeah, what's up with that? Oh my
323.
goodness.
Every time I get an update on like every email, I get an email every week on how we did for the week, and every time that it just gets like 6 or 7 views a week. I don't know. They need it.
Shout out to the crew.
Yeah, big up crew.
Friends of the pod.
Yeah. Well, speaking of people checking in on us, make sure you are following and subscribing everywhere because we are blowing up online. For those of you who don't know, we've hit 580 subscribers on TikTok, and we've also posted a video that is currently on 60,000 views on Instagram, which is absurdity because it's like a 12-second clip, but it has absolutely blown up. But we don't have enough followers from it. We've only got 279 followers. So make sure you are following us there as we are sitting on 58K. I should be more precise. But go follow us so that we can interact with you. We're having a lot of fun and we're posting a lot of videos. So hopefully you can be a part of that. Now, with all the waffle done, let's recap the Club World Cup. I think we.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Slow. Whoa,
Oh,
whoa.
you're
Slow your roll
so
there,
right.
bucko.
You're so right. I got so caught up in the waffle, I
Rookie.
forgot the most important part. Connor, hit me. What do you got?
I've got the team that has helped prepare my beautiful Blues for this Club World Cup final, LAFC. Thank you for helping get us our confidence up in the group stage. Without you, we wouldn't have had the cakewalk route that we've had so far to get us to the final. So, big shout out to LAFC.
Yeah, like if I had to rank things that we need to eradicate from Earth, it's it's hunger and war, famine, Eurosnobism. Like, and
Damn.
honestly,
Over racism?
in any order, in any order. Well, I figured that came into the first one, but um, I don't know if I've shown off the blue one yet. It's from when I was in
I don't
Charlotte.
think so.
It's got the crown on it.
Hmm.
So, the Charlotte Crown, I like it a lot better than this one because that one is just kind of gray and black. It's a bad color scheme and it's got a butt on it. Georgia butt. Okay, now let's recap some
Now
club.
we can start.
Yes, all right. We'll start with the MLS teams. I kind of just want to go through in order the three of them and just talk about their group stage or farther performance and if we thought it was overachieving, underachieving. Because I think the last time we left off, LAFC and Miami had played 2 games when we were talking with Clash of Clubs, and Seattle had only played the one. So I want to kind of go through the rest of it, give our thoughts on how they performed, and share from there. So let's start with Seattle. Talk to me about what you thought about Seattle's performance in the tournament.
I mean, results wise, this is exactly what I think everybody expected, right? Like they're in the group of death. We didn't really expect them to be able to get any points. I think we both kind of figured if they were going to get a point, it would be against Botafogo. But even then, it was a unlikely chance. I do have to say though, I kind of expected them to get blown out in at least one of these games, and they kept it relatively close in all of them. So, yeah, I'm not going to say they overachieved what I expected for them because they still ended up with 0 points. But I certainly don't think they underachieved what I expected for them. So I think they came in, they held their own in most of these games. They kept it competitive-ish. So yeah, I mean, I think Seattle hopefully collected somewhat of a check from being here and can now go back to focusing on the regular season. So kind of par the course, I guess, if I had to put a label on it.
Yeah, well, and I think you started off really well there where you were talking about there are two sides of the coin to look at this, right? It's the results side and the performance side. Results, I think, yeah, nobody expected them to, get a result out of this. If anything, they might have gotten a point. But on the other side, it's how do they perform in those moments, right? And when they entered the group, I'm pretty sure we sat down and we said, as long as you don't go 7-0 against PSG, you're chilling. And quite frankly, they did a heck of a lot better than a lot of other teams. They only made, their first two matches, we talked about it a little bit, where you were close to Botafogo. You might have even outplayed Botafogo, and then you kept it respectable against Atletico Madrid. And we're like, okay, here comes PSG, man, keep it within five and life's good, right? And they left that game with a 2-0 loss, right? Which is better than Atletico Madrid, Inter Miami, Inter Milan, and Real Madrid. And honestly, you could probably argue that it was better than Bayern as well because Bayern conceded with a man down or a man up, right? So, no, they didn't win any games, but they nabbed 2 goals, which I think is way more than anybody expected. I didn't expect them to score once. I thought it would just be complete defense for 270 minutes. So they nabbed 2 goals, and a big confidence boost as well, right? You mentioned going back into the regular season. They leave the tournament with just about $10 million for their participation and not getting a single result. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I want to highlight this because we have all these people, shockingly, the anti-MLS crowd on Twitter who are like, oh my gosh, MLS is so soft because they're losing games and thinking that it's a life is good, right? Real clubs never accept losing games. And it's like everybody in MLS circles saw this group and was like, we're going to get set back 15 years because this group is going to walk all over us, and specifically the Sounders, right? They're going to walk all over the Sounders, and people are just going to point and say, "Look at what happens when real clubs play MLS: 5-0, 6-0. It doesn't matter, regardless of what happened in the regular European Champions League, where it was 5-0 and an absolute dog walk. That would be the only focus. So the fact that we got out of this, and we spoke about this a little bit, the Clash of Clubs as well, where what it's telling us is that no, we are not at the level of the top European clubs. We knew that, but this reinforces that. But it also reinforces the fact that they can't just walk on the field and take us for a walk, drop four on us, and go away for the most part, right? You're always going to have your time. We're going to talk about Miami a little bit where that did happen to them, but it's not a consistent result, right? Where we thought it was going to be 7-0 for Seattle. Miami was going to go, and Miami actually did end up getting 4-0, 5-0. It should have been 8, right? But there are levels where it's not just a constant, we don't need to worry about it anymore, which I think is important in a league like ours where we don't get this exposure as much to value those experiences, right?
Well, you know who did exactly what we were fearing was Auckland City, right? Like they played the second game of the entire tournament and got absolutely walked by Bayern,
Mm-hmm.
and it became a huge discussion point. I remember seeing plenty of people talking about it, and I just imagine like Auckland can kind of get away with it because they're coming from such a small market and they really weren't expected to like do anything like even to a lower extent than any of the MLS sides. But if a Seattle comes out and does same results as like Auckland has done, it would have been absolutely like it would have been as you said, it would have set us back years if that happened.
Yeah.
So
Well, and,
you know,
and honestly, rightfully so, if we perform the way Auckland did, because Auckland are a bunch of semi-pros, we should have, right?
yes,
But the issue is the narrative is that people expect that, right? People expect it to be 6-7 because they rate us so far away, right? And the reality is that it's not. Now, anybody on any day can win, lose, or draw, which is why we've been saying for a while now we can't just take one-off games or a handful of games and say, yeah, MLS is clear of this league, that league, this league, that league because we beat them in 2 games in the Club World Cup. It doesn't work that way. But as an overall blanket of what we're looking at, it is a step in the right direction that we were competitive enough with the salary cap demands that, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, with the salary cap demands that we have preventing us from spending on the level of these teams that we're playing. I don't want to say it's impressive, but it allows us to see, okay, we can compete. Now we can take a step forward and really make some changes here. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's not a we're celebrating losing only by 2 goals, but we're accepting the idea that hey, it could have been a lot worse, and this is a good sign that we're closer than we thought we were.
Yeah, but at the same time too, like I don't think it should we should get to a level of like complacency. Like I think,
No.
correct me if I'm wrong, I think this tournament, like at this size, is going to be every 4 years, I believe.
Yes, that's the plan for now.
Right. So like let's say the same scenario rolls around again in 4 years and we see like a Seattle in a similar type of group with like Botafogo, Atletico Madrid, PSG. In 4 years from now, I would like to not necessarily be in a situation where I'm like, okay, Seattle should be getting out of that group, but I want to see them be more competitive, start to maybe take points here or there in the group. So not necessarily being like, oh, we're just competitive even though we got no points and like be happy with that, but to like see progress. Like I think this was a good measuring stick for where we are right now. And now we can go and work towards improving and not just being comfortable with, okay, we may not win games, but we're going to be competitive on the field with these big European teams.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? We have to be in a spot where we accept that and need to know that there's growth associated with it. And this goes back to something we've talked about a ton, where a lot of the people who are anti-MLS are the same people who don't want to be there when it grows. They want to be there after it's grown, right? And say, yeah, look, I'm a fan of the biggest team in America now because they've gone through the 30 years of growing and now they're beating all these big teams and this is my team now. Nobody wants to be there when they're putting the groundwork down. They just want to complain about it. So let's just accept that we have still a lot of work to do, but it is the work that we're doing is paying off just in small increments, I think is the way I would see that, right?
Yeah, agreed.
And then you've got one other team that kind of goes against that entire narrative in LAFC, your scarf selection, right? One of the most disappointing MLS sides, right? I thought they had a really decent chance of advancing, or at least winning a game, and they fumbled the bag badly. Your thoughts?
To be honest, I mean, I look back at it and the disappointing result was really the Tunis game. Right? Like I don't think we had much expectations for them to get something out of the game against Chelsea, which they didn't, but again, similar to Seattle, they didn't look out of their depth on the field. They looked competitive. And then they got a result against Flamengo as well in the group. Now you're looking at all of a sudden, they're not in a situation where they're competing to get out of this group, but if you flip their result against Tunis, you're looking at them getting 4 points out of this group and looking a lot more competitive and a lot better. So, I think one game didn't work out for them. And to be honest, it kind of makes sense because I feel like LAFC are at their best when they're playing counterattacking. And I think against Tunis, which is a team that feels like LAFC is better on paper, they're not going to necessarily be able to play that counterattacking style. And I think that kind of hurt them in this case. But had they played better in that game, I think we're talking about a completely different perspective for LAFC here. And maybe some of it is Flamengo kind of having that top spot relatively locked up at that point and could take their foot off the gas a little bit when they got the draw against LAFC. But again, if they get the result against Tunis, it's 4 points in this group and they look a lot better than how they look right now.
The problem for me was they they just looked bad, right? And what I mean by that is after even the Chelsea game where they were very defensively compact and they tried to make it difficult. They went out to Tunis and they didn't play well against Tunis. They couldn't finish chances. They had opportunities. They looked really bad, and it was disappointing because that was the game that would have made the rest of the series matter. And what ended up happening was they come out of this game, a game that they again should have at least gotten a point out of, should have won the game, and they got two shots on target, right? They had possession of the ball. You mentioned the counterattack game. They were well in possession of the ball. They made lots of passes. You know, the issue was they couldn't put those chances away. They didn't get it, and they didn't get many quality chances. Tunis made it tough on them, and they didn't have the quality to break them down, right? But what that meant was that they then went into the Flamengo game, and it was meaningless. It had nothing to do. They had lost two games. The other two teams had won. It was over. And that sets up a whole different mindset for what, like you said, what this means for them. You go into a game where it's meaningless. Okay, well, teams are now going to rotate and whatever, and oh yeah, they got a point against Flamengo, but who cares because they were already out anyway, and blah blah blah. If you took 3 points against Tunis like you should have, you have 90 minutes against a good Flamengo side, no doubt, but you have 90 minutes against them where if you win and you win in a certain fashion, maybe you're going on to the next round, right? You give yourself a chance, but they flopped out in a way that was not expected from the group, right? If they had gone from Chelsea, Flamengo, then Tunis, and it was like, okay, they lost, whatever. Okay, I think we would have expected that. But the fact they had Tunis in their lap, and this is not a slight on the Tunis team by any means necessary, but of the three, that was the team they were supposed to take on. And this again goes back to the Sounders thing, like, okay, yeah, we're competing really well with these big European sides, but we're also really close to the tops of other leagues too. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. They did get to leave with $11 million thanks to the draw against Flamengo, but I was disappointed with them, no doubt. I think it was of the three of them, they had the worst relative performance.
I do just want to clarify that I completely agree with you in that they were disappointing and definitely were the most disappointing MLS side. And I think I definitely said that when we talked about this with COC.
Hmm.
So I just feel like I felt like personally I had viewed it as even worse of a performance from them. And then when I kind of look back at it at a kind of broader perspective, it was like if they just played better in this one game, I think we're talking about like this I, this game kind of decided how their view of Club World Cup was going to be. Had they won it, we'd be talking about them at the minimum of, doing what they needed to do,
Hmm.
being on par. And if they lost it, it was pretty much automatic disappointing.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's fair.
everything was riding on this game. And like you said, they did not play well. It wasn't like a situation where they played super well and Tunis just, I don't know, their goalkeeper happened to be like playing out of his mind.
You were trying
Like
to you were trying to
they
pull a prime goalkeeper out of your head, but you forgot you don't watch soccer, so you couldn't name any of them.
no, I could, but the the name that comes to my mind is Ochoa in the World Cup, and I didn't want to do that.
Prime Brad
But
Guzan in
yeah, they
MLS Cup playoffs.
prime Brad Guzan against Lionel Messi. But yeah, they I feel like statistically they didn't even deserve to win this game. So
No,
that's the most disappointing part.
no. Well, speaking of Lionel Messi and teams that get humbled by tranked up Brad Guzan, we have MLS's heroes in Inter Miami, the first team to beat a European side in meaningful competition, rebounding after a mediocre performance against Al Hilal. They go on, they beat Porto, and they have a devastating draw against Palmeiras. And I think I could feel happy with their performance and moving on to the knockout, right? You can look and say, okay, they did MLS proud, no doubt. But you know that they left more to be desired, especially after that Palmeiras game, right? You're watching them, they're in control, they're beating up on Palmeiras, which is a game that it was going to be a good game, but you were worried about quality of their attack, Palmeiras' attack rather, versus the sketchiness of Miami's defense. And you're sitting here thinking, man, it's 2-0 with 10 minutes to go. This is huge. They're gonna top the group. And then two goals in the last 10 minutes, and they actually nearly lost the game altogether had it not been for Ustari. What ends up happening is then they end up getting a round of 16 date with European champions PSG instead of Botafogo, which still would have been tough, but it would have been a much better and much more meaningful, a manageable match than PSG was. Unfortunately, you can't figure things out. Their back line sucks, and now they get absolutely humiliated by PSG, as many other teams were. Right? They were not the exception to PSG's dismantling of every team that they play. Have they conceded a goal yet? I don't know if they have.
They conceded one goal the entire
Okay.
tournament so far.
Yeah. Different gravy, these guys. But, it was disappointing because in their hands was a top of the group, another extra $1 million on top for the win, and a date with Botafogo, who they very well could have come up against and been more successful. Instead, they get the literal best team in the world by a significant margin, and they get bounced embarrassingly. $21 million in the bank later. I mean, they can't complain about that. But the way it ended hurt because they could have, in my opinion, because they could have controlled it and done something different. But happy to hear your thoughts.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, this is still a huge success for us. Like you had said, outside of Brazilian teams, they were the only non-European side to beat a European team in the group stages. Like that's huge. I mean, there's all these other continents playing, including other strong nations from South America, like Argentina, and an MLS side is the only other non-Brazilian team to have beaten the European side. And I understand that Porto is not at the level of a PSG, a Real Madrid, but I think you got to take your wins when you have them, and that's definitely a win for us. I think their tournament performance, while it could have been to even higher heights, as you talked about with like topping the group, I think we still have to take this as a win, and it was a good showing for teams in this league and just the league in general. So I'm glad Miami was able to do something positive because Seattle was kind of in a situation where it was going to be almost impossible, and LAFC did not live up to their expectations. So Miami was really the only ones that the last chance to give us a little bit of hope. And even though they got like walked off the field by PSG, I don't even know if I would necessarily call that an embarrassing game. PSG is walking everybody off the field right now. Like, I think a 4-0 loss is nothing to really be too upset over.
No, I'll have to disagree with you there. If you watch the game, that
No,
game
I
should
know they like
that game should have
statistically
been
they should have
eight.
lost by a lot more.
It should have been
Yeah.
eight, maybe 10. PSG literally just stopped playing at halftime. And that's what's disappointing is you go from, okay, Seattle was the second best performing team against PSG in the entire tournament. Only Botafogo played better. And if Miami just holds on to their lead, they get Botafogo. They play a contested game against Botafogo. Let some other poor sap get beat up by PSG, and now the narrative is, yeah, look, we can stick with anybody, right? Except for maybe the European champions, but we'll never know. And now we do know, and we know how big that gap is. And what was disappointing is, as we spoke about a couple sections ago, where we're like, oh, we were worried because if Seattle got beat up, that was all the things we're going to talk about. Well, guess what? The only thing that people are talking about is, look at what happens when you put Messi and friends up against actual competition. He gets his snot beat out and blah blah blah, blah. Right? Nobody's talking about Seattle being, a strong defensive group against them. Nobody's talking about their win against Porto. Nobody's talking about LAFC's defensive performance against Chelsea. Nobody's talking about any of it. It's just, oh look, Miami got beat down bad. Ha 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 ha. Right? So that's why it
Yeah,
hurts to
but
me. Yeah, it's great. It's great to have the move on, right? And no doubt, but as MLS teams and MLS supporters and MLS content creators, whatever, we always have the extra narrative, right? We always have to deal with the narrative of everybody else, which is disappointing and annoying, but that's what's frustrating to me. I know they usually you can't control those things, but they very well could have today or this tournament.
I really think that if anybody is really making the argument of like, oh, MLS is a joke because Miami got smacked around by PSG, I think that argument is completely out the window at this point because Real Madrid just got the exact same treatment by PSG. Like, absolutely walked off the field. It was 3-0 after 24 minutes. So it's literally like a very similar situation to Miami, where I would imagine PSG probably was able to take their foot off the gas after the 3-0 up in 24 minutes. So,
Yeah.
I think it's more of a conversation of how good this PSG team truly is, and less of a conversation of Miami is really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fine. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just my constant negativity, always looking out, thinking that it can be more improved. But we are on the outside looking in, so we can't really make those changes. But I do want to chat about kind of something we've been hinting at for a little bit, and it revolves around this idea of where does this tournament place MLS in terms of like these league standings, right? We always have this conversation like, oh, MLS is a top 5 or top 10 league, top 15, top 5, top whatever, right? Now we have an opportunity to see how we line up against other leagues, and your thoughts on kind of what does this do for the way that MLS is looked at globally.
Well, I think at the end of the day, the big European leagues are still kind of the top dogs. Like we're kind of at the stage where we expected it to be. Like the final is two large European teams facing off against each other. I would say definitely Brazil's stock rose the largest in this tournament. I mean, they all performed very well and were very competitive, constantly giving the European teams a hard time. I think all of them got out of their group. I'm checking right now. Botafogo, Palmeiras, and Flamengo. And they made good runs in the knockouts too. I mean, granted, a lot of them played each other, but still, they were getting results, and I think they've risen their stock the most. I think MLS did a good job for their stock as well. At the very least, I don't think they dropped their stock. And, I think maybe they even raised it a little bit with Miami's performances. I'd say if I had to give a number in terms of where it's ranked, probably, I'm not sure if they're quite in the top 10. If they are, they're probably very low in the top 10, like around 10. I think more realistically, they're probably just outside of the top 10, but I think making good progress towards eventually getting their way into the top 10.
Yeah, for me, it is this idea, and I was kind of hinting at it before. One-off games don't mean much, right? So we're not taking anything from one result here or there. But what I think that we can say is that unless you are the European champions or up in that level, nobody really blew us out of the water, right? No matter where they were from. However, on the negative side, we did not show that we're miles clear of anybody from other leagues either. Disappointing because it's self-inflicted with roster rules and restrictions and such. And we've already gone through how we need to change them. We do this every other episode, it feels like. We talk about roster rules, right? But I guess my question here is, do owners see this and say, time to make some changes?
I think it depends on the owner you're talking to. I think the Miami owner would say, yeah, absolutely. Like we were this close to being in a situation where we're competing for a potential quarterfinal in the Club World Cup. If we had just a little bit more flexibility in our financial spending, we could have been there. I think you look at teams like that have historically just not spent, like a Montreal, and I don't think it changes anything for them. I'm hoping the teams that were kind of on the fence and not necessarily already with a set track record are seeing this and saying, in 4 years, when this happens again, we want to be a team in this competition. Even if it's just like we want the chance to win a bunch of money from it, I think that would be beneficial. So I'm hopeful that it did have an effect on some of the owners that are a little bit more on the fence and kind of like willing to have a change in the way that they spend or the way that the league spends. But I think there are still going to be a few owners that like basically there's going to be like nothing that gets them to change unless they're just forced out of being an owner.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's gonna be a lot more pushback. Whether there's change or not, I don't know. But I think what you mentioned with the monetary incentive is important, right? If you're going to tell somebody, hey, you can go spend $10 million on 3 players that are going to make your team much more competitive, and then potentially turn that into double your investment with a win, a draw, and a game in the next round with this tournament, absolutely they're going to make that call. That's easy because not only that, you're improving your play in the league, and you give yourself better chance at Leagues Cup and MLS and U.S. Open Cup and whatever you're in, right? But that quick turnover and investment, I think, is something that will push people in the right direction. Now, Are you pushing the right people to do that? And do those people have enough pull in the room to make changes that are important, right? The CBA is coming up at some point relatively soon. Is that going to be enough to turn them in the right direction? I don't know. But I do think that you're going to start seeing more and more because, like I said, we're starting to see these people creep up, right? Jorge Mas keeps talking out. We saw Will Kuntz starting to talk out, and we're seeing all these other owners who are like, it's time to go. And we're going to talk a little bit in Wednesday's episode, so make sure you follow for that. We're going to talk about if there's pressure on these guys from other outside sources to start making changes quicker. And this, again, might be one of those outside influences that are making that happen.
I sure hope so. I mean, I'm ready for much looser restrictions. I'm sure you are. I'm sure lots of fans are. But again, there should be some conversation to be had on how much to loosen the restrictions, and that's a whole other that could be an entire episode in itself. So I don't want to like steer us down that tangent.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But I do want to close this episode up with the idea of just the tournament in general. Were you happy with the way it played out? Would you want to see it come back? Does it need changes? We kind of touched on it a little bit, but now that we've seen the whole thing, I know you mentioned you wanted to see the whole tournament play out, but I want to get your thoughts on it now because some people were not very happy with your take on club football fatigue. They thought you were being a little plastic. Anything you want to say about that?
I mean, I do now that the full thing's played out, I do feel like the Club World Cup was a lot more of a success than I thought it would be. I mean, I remember it historically, and it was very much like on the back burner. I think maybe for a lot of people because their clubs weren't involved. And now that you could expand it, you get a lot more fans that are going to be invested. But, I do feel like the attendance was better than I originally thought it was. There seems to be just more people talking about it in general, more buzz around it, just more news about like what's going on in the games and everything surrounding it. And I do feel like it ended up being like a pretty successful tournament. I mean, I'm sure there's of course things to improve upon. It's the first time they've done this, so at this scale, so I think there's going to be things to work on. But I mean, I would say I've changed my opinion having seen the full tournament that it's not something I would want them to go away from. I would like to see them do it again. I think the games have been competitive too. I think there was concern about if people were going to care, but I think the money has been enough of a driving factor to get people to care.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I think personally it went better than I expected it to.
Yeah, and I think that's the vibe around most people is that they were, of course, when something happens that is different from the general accepted, I don't know how to phrase this, the general accepted uh, soccer norms, for lack of a better term. You're going to get people who speak out and say, "Oh, this is stupid. It's a cash grab. Don't support it." Blah 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 blah. And then people are like, "Yes, this is terrible. We should hate this." And then they watch two games like, "Oh, you know what? This actually isn't that bad," right? Because you get the whole blown up thing, and then you actually see it. It's like, okay, this isn't too bad, right? I've loved the tournament, even if I haven't been able to catch every game. That's not to say that FIFA didn't mess up. They missed on a couple of big things, and we've spoken about this when we were with the COC. Kickoff times suck. Stop catering to the European fans. They will stay up late if they need to. Stop making your ticket prices $500. Easy. And they learned about that ticket prices, right? They slashed those ticket prices in real time when they had to. And that's great. I anticipate they will learn from both of these problems and improve the tournament outright. I also think that they need to figure out a way to balance the schedule so that teams are not playing 2 years straight if they qualify for something like this, right? That's absurd, no doubt. I saw somebody out there before say, hey, you can make something pretty simple like remove Nations League from international tournaments because that's also a cash grab that wasn't needed. But people aren't complaining about that because national team. Sure, I don't think it has the impact that people think it'll have, but there are other ways to get around this. I don't think this tournament's leaving. There are ways to get it, but you cannot make, especially the teams like PSG, Man City. I mean, you saw what happened with Man City. They played all the way through. Rodri tears his ACL, ACL, I think so, and done for the season. And all of Man City's season is blown up. Right? Can't do that with any team, let alone the big ones with the big following. But you don't want to have that happen to anybody, right? Because everybody's season is equally important to themselves. So you have to find a way to balance it out. But I don't think it's going anywhere. This is something that I think you see more teams focusing on, right? If we can do well in the league, we can then do well in the Champions League, and maybe again, we talked about maybe possibly having a ranking system, right? Over 4 years, you're wherever you rank. If you're the top two or three or four, wherever you are, boom, you're in, right? So now people are pushing to play more competitive games and whatever, right? You're seeing an uptick in drive, which is always important, but it's always the big thing for me is player safety and schedule congestion. I'm really interested to see if there's a reaction to the schedule congestion. And I want to actually, I'll send it over to you first before I jump into that. Do you have any ideas on what they could do?
Idea on what they can do, but I know it's a topic of conversation because I've seen people bring up the Brazilian team specifically because they've played an
70
actual
something games.
an insane amount of games. Like
Yeah.
that is just ridiculous. Um, it's just far too much. Like it again, you mentioned it. It comes back to this whole conversation of like, is it worth it to play this many games if it means that you're now losing star players for the entire season and then not being able to see them for whole years? Like I don't know if it is in that case, but it's going to be hard to kind of cherry pick certain competitions and take them out. I mean, there's no chance you can make changes to like the regular season league games, right? Like you kind of have that at two. You play every team twice. Makes sense. You get a home and away. So you're kind of stuck with that. I mean, you could talk about cutting down on cup competitions. Like I think you'd still have some trouble doing that as well. I mean, the FA Cup in England wouldn't be going anywhere, but maybe they look to do something different with the Carabao Cup, or the Leagues Cup or whatever it's called now.
Mhm.
I don't know if I have the right solution right now. I don't even know if there is a right solution. It's very difficult, but I agree with you in that it's almost a little similar to like Leagues Cup in MLS. It's like it was successful and it make a money. It's not going anywhere, regardless of what you think of US Open Cup. It's not going anywhere. So there's going to be another workaround if it is an issue. I mean, I do think it is an issue, but I don't think the solution is get rid of this tournament.
Yeah, no, and here's kind of my thought is schedule congestion's a real thing, and I mean, hell, you could even get every schedule exactly the same, right? Change America to the European calendar, change the European calendar to the American, whatever, right? But the congestion doesn't change. You're just changing when you see the congestion. But we've seen changes before to react to things that are changing in this game. We used to only have three substitutes. Now we've got five in windows, right? I wonder if we see something like increase in squad sizes, right? You can only have 28 players signed to a roster. Okay, well now you can have 40, right? You could basically have two squads, right? Now that already happens with some clubs. Which team's playing in the World Cup final again? Club World Cup final again? One of them has this, don't they? Oh, that's right. They have an entire lone army they can turn into their second team. Chelsea do, don't they? Yeah. But realistically, right, taking all that right, you can take two squads and say, okay, this is going to be my cup squad and my rotation squad, and this is going to be my big squad for all the big money tournaments. I wouldn't be shocked if that's something we see. Would I like it? No, because what's going to happen? All of the European teams are going to use all their stupid money to buy up, overpay for a bunch of people to get two super teams in their over, their umbrella of control, and then think about it, right? City Football Group owns seven teams, so you're just basically saying, hey, you can have 200 players on your books and just they're all yours. You're gonna loan them all out all over the place. They're all gonna be. It sets up a lot of nightmares, but I can see something like that happening because football, while it's a game that everybody loves to be nostalgic over, right? The old days and games gone, guys. We're doing all this soft stuff. It's so woke and VAR and blah 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 blah. But the world changes, right? And so too are the needs and demands of this game. This tournament may push to some of those changes, and I don't necessarily think it'll be a totally bad thing if it's done correctly, right? So we have to, of course, take that with a grain of salt, knowing how good FIFA is at doing things correctly. But it's something that I don't anticipate football being this way forever. It's just not the nature of sports. Players change, demands change, everything changes, and they need to be able to react to that or they fall behind, right? MLB for the longest time was one of the top sports in America, and they're falling fast. NBA is the same way. They're falling fast because they haven't changed their style. They haven't done anything different in the last 50 years. And now people are like, don't really care about it anymore. I want to try something different, right? So you always have to keep up with the times, and I wouldn't be shocked to see football change in response to something like this.
I mean, hopefully it does.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I would agree. So, anything else you want to add on Club World Cup?
Yeah, what are we going to do a celebratory episode when Chelsea wins it and becomes the greatest team in the world?
All right, Euro snob. We're gonna send you to the moon. You and the other Euro snobs are gonna have a colony on the moon where you can celebrate your Europeanness. Listen, thanks so much, everybody, for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Again, make sure you go follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you know the next episode we go live. We're doing an MLS news episode. DC United sacked Troy Lesane. Inter Miami's in for Rodrigo De Paul. And the New York Cosmos are returning into USL League One. And we're going to talk about all of that and how it impacts MLS. So make sure you're following for that. And then follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I really haven't posted on Blue Sky. Sorry. Can't keep up with them anymore. They're just too many. So those are the four we're mainly on. Make sure you go follow us and interact with us. Again, let's just keep getting that video. I'd love to get a video to 100K views. That'd be awesome. So just go watch that 1,000 or so times if you wouldn't mind. But yeah, thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.